The next exteroceptive input with Eduardo Zamorano Zarate. He's a recognized physiotherapist, professor of different courses, and author of one of the books that I'm sure that many of you have in your house. Professionally, he is an informed clinic, but he's a expert in histories. He has histories for everything and information about any kind of thing you can imagine. In addition, he knows very well the human body and the nervous system, and he's also a very good cook. Eduardo, the floor is yours. Thank you. Thank you very much, Katie. I will try to not to fall down here in this cliff. Well, I'm going to talk about the interaction body, mind, body. The human body, human being, 1 second, please. The human being from very old times has asked themselves, what is the mind? What is the spirit? What is our consciousness of myself? And we don't have an answer yet. For the Egyptians, the spirit, the mind was in the heart. In fact, in the mummification processes, they used to withdraw the brains, but they included other organs. They didn't take them away. A very important rationalist philosopher of the 17th century, René Descartes, said that the gland, I mean, a very important anatomist, English, localized the mind in the callous body. I mean, this connection that joins both in brain hemispheres. So both of them, in part, were the parents, the pioneers of the neuroscience. Descartes said, "Cogito ergo sum." I think, therefore, I exist. Now that we have been evolving and modifying this approach, giving relevance to the importance that in the brain performance, in the thought, has the corporal input. I mean, our brain reacts to these inputs and also conditions this input in a kind of dialogue from bottom to top and top to bottom. So we need to see the role of the body and the role of the mind. And this is very important. I mean, it's very important, the, the brain behavior. When I was a young kid, we were taught we had 5 senses, right? Today, we're talking about more senses, like proprioception, and a very important sense, which is interoception. We're going to have a journey through the, the exteroception. Touch. What is the importance of the touch? For example, from 50 years ago, we know that there are some receptors similar to nociceptors, so amyelinic receptors, defined as type C receptors, on which our touch depends to deal with people. In the development of the young kids, in the maturation, in the growth, the growing of the nervous system of the kids, and this is very important on preborn childs, it is essential the effect of this skin to skin touch, and it is very important for the modulation of our nervous system. for these babies to gain weight. I mean, this is our mechanoreceptors of a low threshold that are of a low adaptation and share roads paradoxically with the anterolateral system, with the main route of these messages of threat. But these are pleasurable messages. So this type of receptors in the skin, especially in the hirsuta skin with hair, they are determining in our interpersonal relations, they are determining in our neural maturation. We know también, we also, I mean, we used to think that all responses defined as allergic responses or pain responses depended on the role of low umbral nanoreceptors, which interaction with the anterolateral system allowed us to explain how innocuous stimulus like pressure or stretching or any body movement could provoke pain. Today, we know that this can also contribute the pain in situations of central sensitization. On the other hand, and this is very important, the tactile receptors that we stimulate through low depth stimulus and low, so something like a very, very, very lovely touch. This is have an analgesic effect. We must claim the role of the physical contact of the touch in the stimulation of this kind of receptors that are very highly conditioning to these affection responses, analgesic responses, and that interact with what we heard before, which is our autonomous nervous system. Mammals, from rats, mice to humans, we depend in our growth. We are dependent on affection. I mean, this touch, and this must be taken into account. On the other hand, the corporal proprioception also generates responses in our brain that could be very, very surprising. Our postures, I mean, is understood as emotional motor system, which is also important for the responses. How we move ourselves, what are our, how we move says how we feel. Today we know that the voluntary contraception of the eyes, I mean, when we, I mean, this movement is enough to activate the amygdala and put us in an alert situation of a possible threat. And we know that relaxation of this part, I mean, shuts down the amygdala. I mean, calms us down. If we try to memorize words, like we can see here in the image, we will lose cognitive capacity and memory. When we compare the memory of individuals to try to memorize standing up compared with those who try to memorize while lying down. So those lying down memorize less words, and those memorize are more negative, has more negative connotations. So I think so that makes us think that our posture also conditions how we see the world, how we understand things. So a more optimistic mood or a more pessimistic mood And this is also within our reach. It's also the education of a patient, and it's also part of regulating mechanisms. The role of the interoception. When we talk about interoception, we refer to the role played by this deep, this like thoracic organs, abdominal or pelvic organs. So in relation to interoception, it can have a very important, essential role in our behavior and in some cognitive elements related to our nervous system. So, for example, the interaction between heart and brain. We heard before talk about the cardiac variability. So more a higher variability of the cardiac frequency, we have a better capacity of radio perception. What we can learn from what we see also depends on the cycle of the contraction of the myocardium. When we are in systoles, we have more perception than in diastole. And this can also be important. The heart informs our brain, and our brain reacts to our heart, making an influence in the perception. We have moments, and this is normal, of disconnection in this heart-brain communication. It is understood by scientists like a moment of disconnection. So the more moments of disconnection we have, the lower quality of perception we will have too. We also know, for example, that the somatosensorial sensations are linked to the cardiac pulse. When we compare the pain threshold in systole and diastole, we can see that the pain threshold goes down very significantly during systole. For example, if a person is going to have a blood analysis or something, so we should have this function, for example, in diastole and not in systole. So these are funny facts. Breathing, respiration, lung, and brain. We have much literature about this. We know we have more capacity if we try to memorize, if we have a profound, deep inspiration. We know that our way of breathing can influence in the balance and balance of our autonomous nervous system. Bernabé was saying just a moment ago that our way of breathing can influence directly the variability of the cardiac frequency. Today, we know that slow this, taking it to a frequency to 5 or 6 cycles per minute, so lower than the normal, it is the way of breathing that can increase the most the variability of the cardiac frequency. Breathing is a very important stimulus for many different in many different aspects, and only in itself, it has analgesic effects. So it makes an increase in the pain thresholds and also influences the muscular tone. It is not casualty that different disciplines, old disciplines, traditional, like yoga, like meditation, are focused and based in the attention to breathing. The way we breathe can improve many things, our tension, and can have a very important vegetative, cognitive, and affective impacts. And of course, it has a great importance I mean, what we today we call, and we have here about it, the axis intestines brain. This can also be determining for some functions of the brain on the from the point of view cognitive and also emotional. These visceral afferences are complex. On the one hand, as Raquel said before, is- I mean, we have some functions like the secretion of mucus, enzymes, hormones, and also motility of the intestine. This is interacted by our autonomous nervous system, but at the same time, we have another sensorial activation. This sensorial innervation. This is much more complex. For example, on the one hand, the guts establish a first. I mean, in the spinal medial. So they will be part of the main route of transmission of the nanosection. But paralysis also received vagus references, not only spinal but also phrenic, so that cats have a communication with our central nervous system, which is richer and more complex. These afferences or this signal can determine how we feel, can determine, according to an important neuroscientist like Antonio Damasio, the substrate, the more basic substrate, more elemental of the conscious of the individual or the ego. When we wake up unconsciously, our brain collects the information of our body. So we are recognized as an unique, only individual, and we recognize ourselves as the individual we are. On the other hand, we know that the God's inputs, as we can see here in this image, conduced by the vagus, can be responsible for different behaviors or conducts. When it is not nociceptive, when it is related with the feeding, with the elementary stuff, with our physiologic movement, with our breathing, it has very powerful analgesic effects. It gives us a feeling of well-being. It betters our mood, and we are less sensitive to pain. A good part of these modulating strategies must focus on the effects of the vagus stimulation. So when we think about this axis, intestine, brain, sorry, I'll have some water. The brain feeds from signal from the intestine arising from the immunitary system, like for example, cytokines, hormonal signals arising from the guts and the interaction with the microbiota as precursors of important neurotransmitters that have a direct influence in the brain, and also nervous signals conduced through the vagus or spinal nerves that are determining in the behavior of our brain. The ways of handling of the interoception of intervention are many. Exercise, mm, alimentation, manual therapy, This can influence in the quality, the quality of this input and in the behavior, the balance of our autonomous system in things as our emotional balance. Nesa, non-invasive neuromodulation, has as an objective to include through this input, this bioelectric input, these functions. Neuromodulation is a way of generating this input, this hetero and interoceptive of this repercussion. Thank you very much.
Muchas gracias, Eduardo. Eduardo, la primera pregunta
So
es,
what is the why
con una doble
this
inervación?
again this
¿Qué se
what is the
entiende
meaning? I
por
mean,
que
what
las vísceras
can you tell us that
tengan más de una inervación?
the innervation of the guts? So it's a complicated question. On the one hand, if we think on the spinal innervation and the connection with the anterolateral system, this is with the main route of transmission. We must remember that the anterolateral system, its cortical projection, the neuromatrix of the sensorial experience, is based also in our somatosensorial cortex, primary and secondary. So when we have a part of our body affected that needs protection, it is very important for us to perceive pain and fragility in that part of from that part of the body. So if I have hepatitis, it is important for me to protect the hypochondrium, the abdomen. So it is important that I have pain in this part of the body. So the innervation must have an impact in our somatosensorial cortex, and this is the main role of the spinal innervation. But on the other hand, for, for example, to have the liver protected, I mean, any damage in the liver must generate a behavior, a conduct of a disease. So it is not enough. I need to feel general pain. I should have a higher fatigue. I would have the face of a disease. For the rest of the protect me. So it is necessary for the protection, thinking in pain as a mechanism of protection, not only in a specific region, but it must establish a change of behavior, influencing in the appetite, the cognitive capacity. So to me, this is the first justification of this double innervation, sensorial of the guts. Yes. Okay. One more question, which is easier.
Ahora voy con una más fácil que ha causado sensación.
What
Las preguntas
do you
son,
think is the
¿qué
effect
efecto crees
of
que tendría el Botox
Botox in this
en
part of in the eyebrow? Well, we have some publications about this already. The main use of Botox in the head, apart from cephalia, is aesthetic. There are works, I'm thinking of one now. There's a study where they compare individuals with depression receiving treatment, and we have two groups, and one of these groups, they have this part of the forehead inhibited, and it is very interesting, the results. So it has an effect, it has an impact. Now, beyond the use of Botox, simply the retraining of gestuality to make our movements more pacific, more calm. So learn again must have an impact on how we feel in the sense of perceived threat. What explanation has to have or not to have pain in a process? What's again, please? Neurologic explanation. Well, so we have tumors with pain, and many of them. So that when they start, that we have tumor processes with pain and other processes where the pain starts very late. Well, I was taught from when I was a kid that when I didn't know something, I should ask. So the answer would be, I don't know. What I can tell you is that we have tumoral infiltrations that alter the condition of a tissue or an organ and could also alter the formation of afferences. And there are other tumors that are encapsulated, that are isolated from other tissues, and not necessarily have this degree of interaction with these sensorial elements. I think this would be part of this explanation, but frankly, the answer would be that I don't know. We have many more questions. Thank you for your honesty, Eduardo. Just one comment. There are some studies, I mean, we don't know everything about cancer, but there are some interesting studies on how the different type of tumors affect the bioelectricity of these tissues in relation with the presentation of Fabiola. So I don't have this answer, but many researchers are saying that depending on the type of tumor, the bioelectric fields generated, polarization and depolarization, makes these tumors to grow. And we have, I mean, these electrical aspects have many, many things to do with the explanation of pain. So it was just a comment to go with with your answer. Thank you. Between body and mind, which is predominant in the autonomous nervous system, the attraction. Well, I think it does not make much sense to establish a hierarchy on the unbalance of the autonomous system. If it is more top-down or bottom-up question. I mean, this is continuous. This is permanent. It is like body-mind duality. Are these are different elements, but these are the two sides of a different of the same coin. This is like different faces of a geometric figure. It is very important that what we can build and remodulate with the activity of the encephalus, it can modify, I mean, more basic behaviors like the autonomous nervous system, but it is also very important for us to take care of our body and recreate the heteroceptive references and interoceptive also. Do you think that the autonomous system has a relation with the immune system? Yes, it does, and very directly. Tomorrow we will talk more about this. We need to think that the autonomous nervous system can be a big trigger, activating immune responses, pro-inflammatory in some cases, anti-inflammatory in other cases. It is not casuality that the lymphoid tissue is richly innervated by the sympathetic and the parasympathetic. The treatment of vagus can help in physiotherapy treatments? Of course, no doubt, no question. Do you apply interoception and exteroception in your treatments? Of course. I'm a manual therapist. What is the way of breathing which is more balancing? Slow, paused, not so superficial, not very deep, also not profound. How can Nesa influence patients with hiatus hernia? I don't know. I mean, the treatment of this hiatus hernia, we're talking about a patient that has a dyspepsia clinic, so with reflux, different problems, these different distress. This can be, yeah, this can be influenced by, I mean, Nesa could work here, but I'm not talking about this hiatus hernia exactly to this diagnostic. So these concepts of body-mind, do you think that these concepts can be applied in the day-to-day treatment of the patient? Oh yes, it must be always present. We do not talk to brains. We talk to people. And those people, I mean, the brain is part of the body, is part of this individual, it's integrated. So it is a relationship of permanent interaction, bidirectional, multidirectional. Patient must see themselves, listen to themselves. So what we say, how we say it, the quality of our touch, for example. I mean, this is determining, yes. Thank you very much, Eduardo. No more questions, and the floor is yours again to finish. So pay attention to the sweet melody of a nice touch, of a caress. Thank you very much.
Bueno, vamos a ponernos de pie todos para cambiar un poquito de tercio.
Well, let's stand up, please, and we are going to do some other activities, and we are going to use now music. So I know we have great musicians here with us. You all have a great musician inside of you. So the first thing we will do is to follow a rhythm. I will so you will repeat what I do, okay? You will repeat my
Vamos a coordinarnos
movement.
primero, entonces hago. Vale, me van a imitar. Vale, lo hago yo y después lo hacen ustedes. Pero muy bien. Venga. Yo lo hago y después ustedes lo imitan. Primero aquí. Bueno, creo que vamos a cambiar entonces. Vamos a hacer una cosa. Venga. Bien, muy bien. Y ahora vamos a añadir otro más. Vale, y ahora vamos a hacer más difícil. Usamos aquí. Venga. Pues muy adelantados ustedes. Vale. Y ahora vamos a hacer otro ritmo un poco más complejo. Vale, vamos a hacer. Ha sido mía. Bueno, vamos a dar paso a Raquel, que va a explicarnos un poquito cómo va a funcionar ahora. ¿Vale?
Hola. Bueno, hemos tenido una mañana muy interesante, muy ilustradora, en mi opinión. tenemos de nuevo descanso y tenemos almuerzo en un ratito. Hay un tiempo extra antes del almuerzo y después que está dedicado a que exploréis un poco todo este ambiente que hemos creado, ¿vale? No solo se trata de tener ponencias, sino también tenéis experiencias. Como ya ha comentado antes mi compañera Ketty, tenéis una sala de experiencia Nesa, situada en el pasillo 2 habitaciones hacia allá, donde podéis experimentar, si necesitáis poneros la tecnología porque no habéis dormido bien, si tenéis jet lag también. Los que no la conocéis, podéis probarla. Y además, luego en toda esta zona de hall tenemos zonas de experiencia. Tenemos módulos, hay pantallas y os animo también a visitar los pósters sobre investigaciones y casos clínicos que hemos estado llevando a congresos estos últimos meses. Entonces también aprovecho, hay compañeros nuestros alrededor de todo este evento, no solo ponentes, también formadores, comerciales que están aquí. Aprovechad este ratito para hacer networking, aprovechad para visitar cosas y preguntar. Disfrutadlo y nos vemos después del almuerzo.